I was hungry too, but they needed it more.
The smell of fried chicken drifted through the small kitchen, but the plate sitting on the rickety wooden table had only 3 pieces of cornbread and a half scoop of beans. That was dinner for Darius, a 15-year-old boy with big brown eyes, a hopeful smile, and a stomach that often knew more hunger than fullness. He stared at the plate, torn between gratitude and exhaustion. His mother, who worked double shifts at the nursing home, had quietly apologized for the small dinner before heading out. She didn't know Darius had saved part of his lunch earlier, pushing it into a napkin to make sure his little sister ate more. The boy never complained. In fact, he often whispered to himself, "Someday it'll all be worth it." That night, as he carried his food outside to sit on the porch steps, he saw something unusual. Across the street, under a flickering lamppost, sat an elderly couple huddled together. Their clothes were worn thin, their eyes heavy with tiredness. The old man's hands shook as he tried to comfort his wife, who pressed her stomach like she hadn't eaten in days. Darius froze. His plate was still warm in his hands. His stomach growled, reminding him he hadn't eaten since morning. But then he looked again at the couple. Their ribs were showing. Their lips looked dry. Something deep in Darius's chest told him, "They need this more than I do." He walked over, every step heavy with the weight of his own hunger. "Excuse me," he said softly, almost embarrassed. I don't have much, but maybe this can help." The couple looked up, startled. The old woman's eyes filled with tears as Darius held out his plate. For a moment they didn't move, as if shocked by his kindness. Then with trembling hands they accepted the food. The old man whispered, "Son, why would you do this?" Darius just shrugged, trying to hide his empty stomach. "Because I know what it feels like." He walked away quickly, afraid they might refuse or ask about his own dinner. His steps grew weaker, but his heart felt strangely full. That night, he went to bed hungry, but with a smile. What Darius didn't know was that his single act of sacrifice was about to set in motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. Because the next day, just as the sun rose and the world looked the same, a black car pulled up in front of his worn-down home. The man who stepped out wasn't just anyone. He was a millionaire with a story of his own, and he had heard about the boy who gave away his only meal. The next morning, as Darius walked to school with his worn-out backpack and shoes that had long lost their shine, the neighborhood felt heavier than usual. The black car parked outside his house earlier had left, but the memory of it stuck in his mind. He didn't know what it meant, yet at school, however, he was quickly reminded of where he stood in the world. "Hey, look who it is, Mr. Charity Case." A sharp, mocking voice echoed across the hallway. Everyone turned toward the sound. It was Trayland Johnson, the richest boy in their high school. Tall, athletic, always dressed in brand-new sneakers and designer hoodies, Trayland was the kind of student teachers favored and classmates either feared or envied. His father owned half the properties in the town, and his mother chaired the school board. Trayland strutted toward Darius, his friends trailing behind like shadows. He looked Darius up and down with a smirk. "So rumor has it you gave your dinner away last night." "Man, that's pitiful." Darius clenched his jaw. It wasn't pitiful. It was the right thing to do. The crowd around them snickered. Trayland tilted his head dramatically, pretending to think. "Right thing? Or dumb thing? Let's be real. Someone like you barely has enough for himself. But hey, maybe you enjoy being hungry. Maybe that's your talent." Laughter erupted. Trayland's words cut deeper than the hunger still gnawing at Darius's stomach. "You know what your problem is?" Trayland continued, stepping closer so that only inches separated them. "You act like you matter. Like some millionaire's gonna knock on your door one day and hand you a golden ticket. Newsflash, people like you stay at the bottom. People like me, we run things." His friends cheered him on, high-fiving. Darius said nothing, but inside, his chest burned. Trayland wasn't done. He leaned in, lowering his voice just enough for only Darius to hear. "You'll never be more than a charity boy, and the sooner you accept that, the easier life will be. Then he pulled back, flashed a smug smile and strutted off, leaving Darius standing in silence while the other students whispered and stared. Darius wanted to fight back, not with fists, but with proof. Proof that kindness wasn't weakness. Proof that even a poor boy with nothing could hold more strength than a bully with everything. He didn't know it yet. But his chance to prove that moment was coming much sooner than anyone could imagine. Because in the background, life was quietly preparing to place Darius and Treyland on the same stage. One where arrogance would meet humility, and the entire world would be forced to watch the outcome. That night, while most of the neighborhood lights dimmed into silence, a faint glow burned in the small room at the back of Darius's home. It wasn't from a fancy lamp or desk light, just an old bulb hanging from the ceiling, flickering now and then like it was too tired to keep shining. But beneath that light sat Darius, hunched over a battered notebook filled with sketches, numbers, and lines of writing that only he seemed to understand. His pencil moved quickly, pausing only when he glanced at a second-hand textbook he had borrowed from the library weeks earlier. This was his secret. Darius wasn't just a boy who sacrificed meals. He was a boy who sacrificed sleep, comfort, and even childhood pleasures because of a fire that burned inside him. A dream. He dreamed of designing things, of building structures that could help people, of using his mind to create solutions no one else thought possible. From old soda cans, he had once made a working wind turbine for his science fair. From scraps of wood, he had built birdhouses that actually sold at the flea market. His teachers sometimes said he had an engineer's brain, but outside of school, no one knew. Not even Treyland, who mocked him daily. What most people saw was just a skinny boy with ragged shoes. What they didn't see was the hours he spent studying diagrams of bridges, buildings, and inventions. They didn't see how he'd sit at the window of the public library after closing time, memorizing equations from the glow of the streetlight, but someone had seen him once. It was 3 years earlier, when Darius's father was still alive. His dad, a mechanic with grease-stained hands and a booming laugh, used to tell him, "Son, the world might not give you much, but your mind. That's your superpower. No one can take it away unless you let them." Darius had carried those words like a shield, even after his father passed, even when hunger gnawed at him. Even when Treyland's insults pierced his confidence, he remembered, "Your mind is your superpower." His mother, though exhausted from endless shifts, also whispered encouragement. "One day, baby, they'll see you for who you really are. Keep building, keep dreaming." So he did. Every night, every spare moment, and yet, to the outside world it remained invisible, until the day the school announced the annual Innovation Challenge. The challenge was simple in theory but fierce in competition. Students had 1 month to design or create something that could make life better. Winners received not only a trophy but also a scholarship offer from a local university's youth program. When the announcement was made in the cafeteria, Treyland immediately slammed his tray down and declared, "Well, that's mine. Nobody's beating me." His friends cheered, already convinced. After all, Treyland's father could buy him the best materials, the best tutors, the best everything. Darius stayed quiet, but inside a spark lit up. He didn't have resources. He didn't have money. But he had creativity, discipline, and a notebook full of designs that he had been preparing for years without even realizing it. That night, he flipped through his sketches, eyes wide with possibility. He had an idea, one so powerful it made him sit up straight. What if he could create something using only recycled and discarded materials? Something sustainable, something cheap, something that even poor families like his could benefit from. He began scribbling furiously, pages filling with arrows and diagrams. His hands moved like lightning, his brain piecing together everything he had studied, every late-night calculation, every lesson from his father. For the first time in a long time, Darius felt unstoppable, but he knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Treyland would mock him, teachers would doubt him, classmates would whisper. Still, He whispered to himself the same words he had told that old couple. Because I know what it feels like. He knew what it felt like to go without. And maybe, just maybe, his creation could help people so they wouldn't have to. Somewhere deep down, Darius sensed it. The innovation challenge would not just test his skills, it would test his spirit. It would be the moment where all his hidden strength finally came to light. The gymnasium was buzzing with excitement. Rows of tables were lined with colorful displays, shiny prototypes, and banners that screamed confidence. Parents, teachers, and local officials filled the bleachers, murmuring with anticipation. This was the Innovation Challenge Finals, the most important event of the school year. For many students, it was just a competition. But for Darius, it was everything. He stood nervously at his table, clutching his project like it was both a weapon and a lifeline. His clothes weren't new, his shoes were still frayed, but his eyes burned with determination. On the far side of the gym, Traylon Johnson towered at his sleek presentation booth. His project gleamed under polished spotlights, a solar-powered drone built with expensive parts. The crowd oohed and ahed as Traylon demonstrated it hovering smoothly. He smiled confidently, nodding at the applause like a celebrity at a premiere. "Guess this one's in the bag," Traylon bragged to the judges. "When you have resources, talent, and brains, it just comes naturally." His friends clapped and the judges scribbled notes. Darius watched quietly, his stomach knotting. His project sat beside him, a clunky, hand-built contraption made from soda cans, bicycle parts, and wires he had salvaged from broken radios. To anyone passing by, it looked more like junk than genius. A whisper passed through the audience. "That's Darius's project. It doesn't even look finished." Another. "He doesn't stand a chance against Traylon." The sting of their words cut deep, but Darius steadied his breath. He remembered his father's words, "Your mind is your superpower." When the announcer finally called his name, "Next, we have Darius Carter," the room grew quieter. Some students stifled laughs. Even Traylon smirked, leaning back with his arms crossed, ready to watch him fail. Darius wheeled his invention forward, his palms sweating. He adjusted the microphone at the podium, his voice trembling at first. "Good evening. My name is Darius Carter. My project is called the Ecolite Generator." The judges leaned forward, curious. Darius held up a bundle of wires attached to a small turbine made from recycled cans. "This device creates energy from discarded materials," he explained. "It uses wind power and motion energy to generate light that could be used in homes that can't afford electricity." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some people yawned, others shook their heads. One student muttered, "What a joke." Traylon cupped his hands and mock-shouted, "Hey, Darius, maybe you should have built yourself a new pair of shoes instead." Laughter rippled through the gym. For a moment, Darius felt his confidence falter. His throat tightened. He wanted to run, but then he saw something, his mother, sitting quietly in the back row, still in her nursing scrubs. Her eyes met his, tired yet full of belief. She gave him the smallest nod, as if to say, "Keep going. I'm here." A calm strength washed over him. His hands steadied. He flipped the switch on his contraption. At first, nothing happened. A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. Traylon leaned toward his friends. "Told you, junk." But then, slowly, the small fan blades began to turn. The wires buzzed faintly. And then, against all odds, the light bulb at the top of the machine flickered to life. Gasps filled the gym. The bulb didn't just flicker. It grew brighter, steady, illuminating the entire space around his table. Darius's voice grew stronger. "This device was made entirely from recycled materials. It costs almost nothing to build. Imagine families in poor neighborhoods being able to light their homes at night. Imagine communities using clean energy without paying high bills. This isn't just a school project, it's hope." The audience, once dismissive, now leaned in, eyes wide. The judges whispered to each other, nodding. Darius wasn't done. He cranked the pedals attached to his contraption, showing how kinetic energy could charge a small battery. This means even a child pedaling for 10 minutes could power a lamp for hours. The bulb glowed brighter, steady and strong. It wasn't sleek like Trayland's drone. It wasn't flashy. But it was powerful and practical. Silence swept over the gym, the kind of silence that comes when people witness something they can't quite believe. Darius stepped back, his chest rising and falling. For the first time, he felt taller than Trayland, even without fancy shoes or designer clothes. But Darius, he had created something from nothing. And worse, everyone knew it. As Darius lifted the trophy high, the spotlight caught his determined face. The audience cheered even louder. Trayland felt invisible for the first time in his life. He turned to leave the stage area, his steps quick and uneven. Whispers followed him like shadows. Did you see his face? He's furious. Darius beat him fair and square. Guess being rich doesn't make you the smartest after all. Each whisper was a dagger. By the time Trayland reached the exit, his chest burned with humiliation. For years, he had been untouchable. The star athlete, the rich kid, the one everyone admired or feared. But in one night, a boy he mocked as Mr. Charity Case had stolen everything he valued most: respect, admiration, and the spotlight, and there was nothing Trayland could do to get it back. When the applause finally softened and the crowd began to settle, Darius still held the trophy like it was a dream he hadn't yet woken from. The weight of it felt real, but heavier still was the realization of what it meant. For once, his name wasn't whispered with pity. It was shouted with pride. As the judges shook his hand and congratulated him, dozens of students who had never spoken to him before came rushing forward. Darius, that was incredible. You're a genius, man. Can you show me how you built it? Even teachers who once overlooked him now beamed with admiration. The principal clapped him on the back, saying, "Young man, you've brought honor to this school." In the back row, his mother wiped tears from her cheeks. She had worked endless nights to keep the lights on, and now her son, her boy who used to study by street lamps, was being recognized for building light itself. But the triumph didn't stop at applause. Mr. Pierce, the philanthropist, approached Darius on stage and handed him a card. "This isn't just an invitation, son. It's a doorway. At the Youth Academy, you'll have access to labs, mentors, and opportunities that will help you bring this invention to life. Imagine how many homes could be lit across America, across the world, because of your idea." The audience gasped. It was no longer just about a trophy. It was about real change. Word spread quickly beyond the gym. Local news stations picked up the story. Teen builds energy device from scrap, wins competition, and full scholarship. Within days, clips of Darius's invention circulated online, inspiring thousands. Comments flooded social media. "This boy is proof that genius doesn't come from money, but from heart. If he can do this with scraps, imagine what he'll do with resources." Darius Carter is the future. Back in his neighborhood, something remarkable began to happen. Neighbors who once pitied Darius now looked at him with pride. Children gathered around him after school, asking to learn how to build things. Parents told their kids, "See? Kindness and hard work matter more than arrogance." Even the elderly couple he had shared his meal with knocked on his door one evening. The woman held his hands with tears in her eyes. "You gave us food when you had none. And now you're giving the world something far greater. God bless you, son." For Darius, that moment meant more than any trophy. His victory wasn't just personal, it sparked a shift. Teachers started new workshops, encouraging students to create with recycled materials. The school launched a Light for All campaign, inspired by Darius's project. Donations came pouring in to help fund prototypes of the Eco-Light generator for families in need. And slowly, people began to whisper less about Trayland's fall and more about Darius's rise, because Darius wasn't just a winner of a competition. He was a symbol that no matter where you start, no matter how little you have, with perseverance, kindness, and vision, you can create something that changes lives. He had turned hunger into hope, sacrifice into strength, struggle into triumph, and this was only the beginning. Darius's story is more than a competition win. It's a reminder that true greatness isn't measured by wealth, status, or the clothes you wear. It's measured by the choices you make when no one is watching. When Darius gave away his only meal, he didn't do it for recognition. He did it because he understood compassion. He knew the pain of hunger and chose to spare someone else from feeling it. That single act of kindness set off a chain reaction that changed not only his life, but the lives of countless others. And isn't that what real power is? Not dominance, not arrogance, but the ability to lift others, to inspire hope, and to remind people that even in the darkest moments, light can be created. So let Darius's journey remind us all, you don't need riches to make a difference. You don't need privilege to create change. What you need is a heart willing to give, and the courage to keep going when the world doubts you, because kindness paired with perseverance has the power to transform the impossible into reality. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories that remind us all of the good in humanity. And remember, every small act of kindness could be the beginning of something extraordinary.